Now, Deputy Boyd Barrett sharing with Deputy Barry.
Yeah, I'm sharing my time with Deputy Barry, half and half. Yeah, it's with a sort of grim fascination that you look on at the mess, shambles, manoeuvring that's going on in Westminster, and it's with kind of utter horror that you look at some of the characters in this drama, and most notably, obviously, the Tory right, and the manner in which Theresa May has to deal with these rather obnoxious forces on the Tory right, or for that matter, the DUP. But you would have thought, and I still think, that at some point reason will prevail, because it's not really in anybody's interests that there would be massive disruption between Britain and Europe, Britain and Ireland, or any of the people who are a party, any of the territories, if you like, the countries, the players in this, that there would be massive disruption in terms of the movement of people, trade, services. And so you would think, and I still think it is the most likely outcome, that there will be some kind of no-deal deal. And even the obnoxious, politically bankrupt Boris Johnson, when he was here in Dublin, not that I would give much credence to just about anything Boris Johnson would say, but even he, on the sort of the hard right of the Tory Brexiteer wing of the Brexit movement, was saying that he wouldn't countenance the crash out, and that there would have to be some continuation under whatever guise, some continuation of existing arrangements if some sort of deal wasn't done. And I have to say, in that regard, I don't entirely buy into the Fianna Fáil, or for that matter the Labour narrative of the government are kind of not doing anything behind the scenes. I think they probably are doing quite a lot, as it happens, to prepare, because it's not in your interests either for there to be massive disruption. So regardless of whether you're from the right or from the left, I don't really see why you wouldn't be busy preparing as best you can in a very uncertain situation to try and minimise the level of disruption, whether it's north-south or east-west or whatever. That's not to say there aren't other things you mightn't be doing, and I think Deputy Helen is absolutely right about the ferry, and maybe there where you are caught up is with, if you like, the Fine Gael aversion to state intervention. And that's more of a left-right issue, and indeed a debate we have to have with the European Union about the need for substantial state intervention and, if necessary, state aid, something the European Union doesn't really like, if there is massive disruption. And I would like to know from the Taoiseach to give us as much detail on that as possible. Is there going to be money? Is European solidarity going to extend to actually putting funds in place to safeguard sectors of our society and our economy that could be in serious trouble if the crash out happens and if major disruption occurs? Because certainly in some areas, EU state aid rules could be a problem in us doing that. And that's one of the reasons, from a very different perspective from Boris Johnson, why the left have a problem with the EU's economic rules, because they don't like state aid, whereas we think sometimes state aid is absolutely necessary to maintain key infrastructure, key industries and so on in a situation where the vagaries of the market, of geopolitics or whatever put those things and people's jobs under threat. And I would absolutely appeal to the government to desist from using Brexit to even act as a whip over the nurses. Absolutely shocking. references by the Taoiseach to, the nurses are being kind of irresponsible in demanding decent levels of pay in the health service because they shouldn't be doing this because of Brexit. And Brexit should not be used as the new austerity stick for people to not fight for just and legitimate demands on pay or for services or whatever else. But having said that, you would think reason prevailed. Of course, there were theorists of the Second International, which is Deputy Howland's political tradition of socialism, who argued before the First World War that there would never be another global war because it didn't make sense from a trading point of view in an integrated global economy for people to go to war. Of course, shortly after that theory was put out, the greatest war in human history occurred between big powers who were ruthlessly fighting over control over resources, markets and so on. So although reason you would think would prevail, doesn't mean it actually will prevail. And this is where the point about the far right is very important, Taoiseach. And you see, it's easy enough for the European Union, because God Almighty, they're an easy target, to point at the Tory right and say, what sort of obnoxious people are these? But not to look to its own backyard, as was alluded to by Deputy Howland, when you look at what's going on with Hungary, with Austria, and with the rise of the far right. And the degree to which Europe has to take responsibility because of its failures for the growth of very, very dangerous political forces across Europe who actually mirror, and in some cases are far worse than even the Tory Brexiteers and the threat that they pose. But in my last minute, I just want to ask a few things. First of all, just to underline the question, what discussions have you had with Europe about funds and money to support us if there's a difficult situation, about waiving state aid rules if necessary in order to maintain and develop and protect key infrastructure and services and sectors of our society? Secondly, the question of the border. See, I'm slightly surprised at the Sinn Féin line of if there's a no-deal Brexit, that there's going to be a border. Well, can you answer that question? Because you see, the only people who can put up a border is the Irish government or the British government, right? So I'd like to know, are you going to put up a border if there's a no-deal Brexit? Because I don't think you should. And have you talked to the British government about whether they're going to put up a border, if there is? And what discussions have you had with the European Union about their intentions to put pressure on us to insist on a border in the case of a no-deal Brexit? And lastly, I do think if there's no deal Brexit, you should be supporting the call for a referendum on a united Ireland, because I do think democratically the people of the North have the right to make a decision whether they want to go along with a British government they don't agree with.